Hi all, welcome to my channel. It is your girl, Dr. T. I am a licensed psychologist out here in New York, and I'm also a certified school psychologist. I've been a school psychologist for about 10 years now, and I've been a licensed psychologist for about, I would say 5 years or so. I have my own private practice called Path to Growth Counseling Services. And I've had a colorful work history, but today I really want to talk about something that happens often and especially happens to school psychologists of color. And I just want to speak to my experience and also talk to you about some of the lessons that I've learned, some things that you can also watch out for when you are working. This could be for new school psychologists. This could be for school psychologists who are early career professionals or just seasoned professionals that probably still haven't found their way while working in the school. So I'm going to really be talking about today just like what happens when somebody undermines you. I think just a little bit more about myself. Like when I first got my doctorate, it was great. It was really exciting. And it was like, ooh, people get to call me doctor now. There was all this like wonderful excitement about just being a doctor and just having my license and just being able to kind of work in a school and people calling me by my name. And I think oftentimes because we're not as visible, especially we're not as visible as doctoral level professionals, especially being that less than 4% of psychologists in this country are women of color or are African American descent. So getting that respect is definitely difficult. When I started in a school out in Long Island, like I was kind of, people kept saying miss. And, I'm a really down-to-earth, diplomatic person. I don't really let a lot get to me, but that was something where I had to really stand my ground. So really the theme of this video is to make sure that you stand your ground. Let me talk about the incident in more detail so that you guys have a background story and also just kind of go through my lessons along the way. This started when I was already a doctor and I was already working, already had experience under my belt. I was working with a teacher aide. And me having a trauma-informed background, I was trying to explain to the teacher aide like what had happened. This student who had autism had kicked her. And he had kicked her when he was kind of having, I think there was a sensory overload. He just got really overwhelmed. She was also overwhelmed. She also had a lot going on because she was dealing with him for about 30 minutes before I got in and they asked for my assistance. And the first thing that she says to me after they call me, they're like, hey, doctor, can you come down? I'm like, okay, no problem, I'll come down. The first thing she says to me is, did you know that he kicked me? What are you gonna do about it? Because I demand an apology. And I was like, okay, let me just get him stable first before you come on in and you're just like, I need what I need. So I spoke to him, I calmed him down. We used the coping skills that we learned in counseling to really bring him down to that level where I needed him to be in order for him to even, because his amygdala hijacked, he wasn't there. He wasn't that same kid that I work with in counseling. He was very much triggered by whatever happened. And being on the spectrum, he was particularly sensitive to whatever happened in the classroom that really just kind of kicked him into a sensory overload gear. And when he was just flailing his arms about and kicking, he had probably not with intention kicked the aide. So I went to the aide and I explained to her, I was like, after he calmed down, I said, you know what, we can talk to him about this, but I don't think that we should force him to do an apology until he's ready, until he can understand what happened in that incident, understand what triggered him. And she was just like, what? How dare you? He hit me. How could you not understand? He hit me. And I was just like, I understand that he kicked you. I get it. It's not easy, but he wasn't in the right state of mind. We have to just kind of wait for him to calm down a little bit before we trigger him and force him to do something that he's not ready to do. And also talk about something that he might not have even remembered what happened. So she was just like, she looked at me like I have 5 heads, and this stuck till this day, still very much sticks with me. She was like, well, whatever. You're the psychologist, so I guess what you say goes. And she rolled her eyes and kind of walked out. I've been spoken to different ways before, but the energy that she shot at me, the way she said, well, you're the psychologist, it was so disingenuous. It made me so uncomfortable that I had to just be like, what just really happened? And she had done that in front of the student, which really enraged me because he shouldn't have seen that. He shouldn't have been privy to that conversation, first of all. And I just felt like he saw my discomfort and he looked at her and looked at me and just looking like, well, what are you going to do about that? Well, I'm sure he didn't really care because he was just calming down in his own right, but it was very, 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 very rude. And here is the lesson for anyone who's probably in that position, especially if this aide was a little bit older than me and she probably felt uncomfortable kind of taking direction from me at the time, because that's how the culture of the school was. Like, we kind of were in charge of the behavior plans, and like kind of what we said, the psychologist said in a moment of crisis went. But honestly, because we are the experts in that, I'm an expert in crisis intervention, I'm an expert in trauma, I know what I'm talking about. And here is lesson learned. I really should have never apologized. I don't think you should ever, if you're ever in a situation where you've been undermined by a staff member, in that moment, don't ever apologize, because it almost validates their stance. I made the mistake of going up to her and saying, I'm sorry, maybe I mishandled that the wrong way, maybe I da-da-da. And I feel like it gave her the power to be like, well, yeah, you really don't know what you're talking about. Like, when I knew what I was doing was right, I trusted my gut. You should never force a child to apologize. That's completely against my values and my beliefs as a psychologist, especially a trauma-trained psychologist, really against my views. In that moment, stand your ground. In that moment, never apologize for your knowledge. Never apologize for your expertise. Never apologize for implementing what you believe is the right thing to do, and never do something that goes against your values and then apologize for someone's rudeness. And I think definitely as a woman of color, like, it didn't really help me. And as a professional, it didn't really help me to apologize to her and kind of just be like, well, and also like, it almost was like I was admitting fault, but I really didn't do anything wrong. In that moment, I wish I would have said to her, be like, you know what? In the future, if you have something to say to me, if you don't agree with something, pull me to the side and tell me. You don't have to do that in front of a student. And then I really wish I had reiterated my point of never force a child to apologize. And also, let's do some restorative work. He may not have remembered, and it turned out he didn't remember. He actually was like, I kicked her? When did I kick her? I'm so sorry. He was actually naturally apologetic. He just really didn't remember because he was in a state of crisis. So the second lesson really here is just make sure that you're able to communicate what you need professionals to do. And the next time that we had encountered this issue, I was just like, I felt a little bit more confident, but I also felt almost invalidated by that experience of me apologizing to her afterwards when I shouldn't have, because it did happen again. And she almost had this look like, well, I'm going to get my apology now because you did this. So I stood my ground and I just told her, I was like, based on this research, I kind of just educated her. And she still continued to kind of give me attitude and pushback. And I really do feel like it was because of that first time that I kind of apologized, and I was very inconsistent in my response to her. And going back, I do wish that in that moment I had spoken to her and also processed that incident with her. Maybe she was always having a rough day. She had spent 30 minutes in crisis with the student. So for her, she was probably just overwhelmed herself. So the third thing that she can probably do in that moment is, whenever you're feeling undermined, it's also just get their perspective, but not in a way where you're invalidating your own experience, but just be like, can you just tell me in your own words what that was like for you? And then I'm going to tell you what it was like for me. Because people do want to feel heard. I do think in that experience, she undermined me in that moment because she was upset and she was frustrated. But it does not excuse her behavior. You are allowed to feel how you feel. You are allowed to feel maybe intimidated by my presence. You're allowed to feel frustrated with a student. You're allowed to feel angry about this. You're allowed to feel angry with administration because maybe they didn't give you the resources. But you're not allowed to treat me that way. So it's very important to just be like, I get where you're coming from. I get your perspective. Here's where I was coming from. But what happened, what you did, I can't tolerate that, especially because I'm in the trenches with you too. So I would definitely communicate that to the staff member. And if all else fails, and this has happened to me before, not with this particular incident, but if all else fails, go to admin and ask for a mediator or ask for someone to kind of mediate the discussion if you feel like they're not listening to you. I have so many other stories. That story was the most traumatizing because I really have never felt that uncomfortable, and I've never had someone do that in front of a student before. So I think that moment still kind of stays with me, and me and that staff member were never really on the same footing ever again. It ended up being that she really she spoke about me to other school staff, and she really just despised me for that moment. I don't know why. And we never really got a chance to go to admin and really talk it out. But that moment really stands out to me, and it really was a defining moment for me to kind of stick up for myself and to never apologize for my presence, never apologize for my profession, and to never apologize for my expertise, and to always unapologetically walk into a situation knowing that I have to first settle down this crisis the best way that I can, and that apologies and reparative work have to happen after. So I hope this video was helpful for you. Please leave comments in the video. Please leave comments under the video about things that have happened to you if you want to share them. And if any advice, I will definitely be more happy to answer them. You can also follow my page on Instagram at Growth with Dr. Toussaint. And I'd be more than happy to answer questions there. And I post a lot of self-care tips, a lot of resources for dealing with children in crisis on my page as well. And check out my website, www.pathtogrowthcounseling.com. If you want to check out my growth store, there's a really great apology form there where I talk about, like, you have to kind of go through all these phases first, like really process what happened with a student, assess their level of understanding, assess if they even remember the incident, and kind of delicately walk them through the steps of an apology, because that takes time. Children are not, they're not born, they don't come out the womb knowing how to apologize. You really have to teach them that skill for it to mean something. I'll never force a child to apologize, and I'll never force anyone to just accept an apology that's forced, because that's not right to the person that was hurt. So if you like this video, please also share it with other school psychologists, other educators, if you might, because I'm sure our experiences are all the same, regardless of our degree type, regardless of what we do in the school. All right, and I hope you enjoyed my dog, Miss Coco. She's probably gonna come in and say hello sometimes. But yeah, thanks for watching my video, and please like, subscribe, and share.